Hey everybody, welcome to this week's chosen video. Some of the stories that we've been doing lately have been some really well-known stories. David and Goliath, Gideon. This week we get one that's a little lesser known. It's from 1 Samuel 14. It's a story about Jonathan. Jonathan is the son of King Saul, and he's one of David's close friends. And this story involves him and his armor bearer. If we back up a couple of verses into chapter 13, we see that there's a battle going on. And on the day of the battle, no one in Israel's army has a sword or a spear except Saul and his son Jonathan. And then in the night, Jonathan awakens his armor bearers and says, "Hey, I've got an idea. Let's go over and fight the Philistines." Let me read verse 6 for you. It says, Jonathan said to his young armor bearer, "Come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." And I'm so struck by that statement and that verse, particularly the word perhaps. Perhaps the Lord will help us. Jonathan didn't know what God was going to do, but he knew what God's heart was, and he knew what God could do. And so he says to his armor bearer, "Let's go fight this battle. As big an underdog as we are, let's go fight, because nothing's going to stop God from saving us if that's what his plan is." And the armor bearer shows great courage. He says, in verse 7, "Do all that you have in mind. I am with you, heart and soul." As I look at this story, I see a number of things. I see courage on behalf of Jonathan and on behalf of his armor bearer. And I think we read the Bible a lot for faith. I think we read it for comfort. But I also think we need to read the Bible more for courage. We need to find courage in our reading of God's word. Something else I see in this story is this whole idea of ambiguity and uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty, and Jonathan didn't know what God was going to do. And we often think that, if we're followers of Christ and we're God's chosen people, that's going to clear up all the ambiguity. But it doesn't do that at all. It calls us to live in that uncertainty and in that ambiguity. That's what living by faith is. And one more thing I see in this story is vulnerability. It's just all over the place. They have no weapons. They're outnumbered. They're in Jonathan's statement, perhaps the Lord will help us. There's vulnerability there. And then when they do go to attack, chapter 14 tells us they climb using their hands and their feet to climb up the rocky crag to get to the Philistines, a vulnerable position where they can't even have a sword or a weapon in their hand. And I think that's a key to life in the family of God. A key to our chosenness is we are vulnerable. And we need to stop pretending that, that we have it all together and we know all the answers. We are a vulnerable people, and in that vulnerability, God acts and God blesses. We're going to talk about vulnerability a little more Wednesday night in our 5:30 Advent service, so join us for that. And then join us Sunday morning as we dig deeply into this story of Jonathan and his armor bearer. That's Sunday morning at 8:30 in the fellowship hall and on Zoom. Have a great week. Bye-bye.